And I love Julia and Paul's relationship. Just their sort of, here she is, this 40-year-old virgin, right?
Yeah.
And she meets this man and they fall madly in love. I love their, afternoon love lunches.
Yes, I know.
This woman gets a lot of action at that,
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about just their relationship and how he was able to sort of be there for her and just adore her at every...
Well, I think that on a certain level, Paul was more a man of the world. I mean, he was a bit older than she was, 10 years older than she was. And he had a multitude of love affairs, one very serious where the woman died, and Julia was not as schooled in
in
the amorous department. And so and I think on a certain level she'd given up. She was a young woman who was 6'2" in the 1940s, and her sister was 6'4". They were albatrosses in the world, in a world where women of her class and education, expected to go east, get a good education at Smith, and marry someone from Yale, and that's her career, is to raise those wonderful children. The boys who would go on to be captains of industry, and the women would be the wives. And that's the way it was. But because they were so tall, I think, and they had given up some part of that dream and thought, well, hell. Julia went off and joined the OSS, went to China during the war. Very brave, very brave.
Yeah.
And that's where she met Paul. And so that partnership was formed in a spirit of adventurousness and fearlessness. And so it came from a place of, where they were like-minded.
First, talk quickly about sort of getting down the Julia E's sort of mannerisms and the voice. And also the height in there, sort of movie magic height. Yeah,
I mean, we're all so familiar, but the height was very important to me because I felt like part of it formed her personality, just what she had decided about herself and what she had decided wasn't going to happen or matter by it. And her intelligence, her energy, the outside of her was easy to achieve in a way. I mean, I'm sort of a mimic, and that's not so hard. It's the other parts, that the animating spark of, I don't know what it is. It's just willingness to get up and be in a good mood. That's gigantic.
But we know her with this sort of sing-songy voice,
yeah.
And I think you sort of stumbled upon auditioning for this part in a weird way, right? You came out and you bumped into Nora, and you sort of like, that's wonderful, and she was like, oh gosh, there's my Julia.
Well, this is just, yeah, I guess that happened. I don't remember it. I might have had a few before the theater, but I don't remember this happening.
Were you worried?
Said it happened, I'm sure it did.
Right. Were you worried, though, about taking it too far, doing sort of a caricature of Julia? Like, where did you draw the line as far as,
Well,
her?
Dan Aykroyd had already done the caricature, so I felt, and really, so did Julia. Julia herself made a version of herself late in the show that was hyperbolic. And so looking at the earliest ones where she was already in her 50s, early 50s, just starting a little studio in Boston where nobody done this before. Nobody cooked on screen before. And she'd not been on TV. She'd not been videotaped. We're also used, it's hard to imagine that world where you haven't been,
seen by somebody.